because now it's time for Cutting the Cord, Amy!
Whoa!
Cutting the Cord!
Woo!
Yeah! Wrap it up! You know, like every Oscar host, like 3 hours into the show, always says, well, we're halfway through the show now. I feel like we're sort of at that moment.
Well, it's bi-weekly. That's the problem now.
So,
You gotta pat it for all it's worth.
Well, and then you
saying that are you saying that as a bi-weekly, we now need to be like 2 hours?
Well, yeah.
Well, you know what?
We gotta pad the show. We wouldn't have done Cars 4 if we had a show next week.
Cars, or even Cars 2.
Cars
But then again,
Cars
but
2.
here's the problem is that we
Whatever.
have to make extra time for Colin Hanks. Because he is to talk about his documentary. Yeah. Woo. I won't tell you what it is. I want him to tell you what it is. It's very exciting. So here's the thing, Amy. Cutting the cord, instant gratification. Now, nowadays, these kids, they love the streaming.
They do.
They do. And so we want to recommend films on Netflix, Crackle, Hulu Plus that people can stream. So the way it works is I will recommend a film, talk a little bit about it, get your thoughts on it. You'll recommend a film, talk a little bit about it, get my thoughts on it. We'll go back and forth.
All right,
a couple
let's do it.
times.
Let's
until
go.
You've got like 4 movies that
It's
you
go
can actually
time.
rent. It's go.
Yeah.
It's go time.
It's go time.
My first film is The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and Her Lover from 1989. This is a film that, as Elaine had said, who said?
Me.
You said, huh?
Probably Elaine.
Probably Elaine. Said just recently was available at all on these services. And she is so right. And The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and Her Lover is a film unlike anything you have ever seen. It was directed by Peter Greenaway, who is just a wild director. And as a wild director, this is his wildest film. And it is gaudy and bold and colorful and angry and violent and absolutely brilliant. This movie is like nothing you have ever seen. In the movie, Michael Gambon plays a gangster, probably the most disgusting, vile, loud, obnoxious, violent person ever committed to film. That is how horrible he is. And he owns this restaurant. And in the restaurant every night, he eats a big banquet with his posse that includes his poor put-upon wife, played by Helen Mirren. And Helen Mirren hates this guy because he's such a horrible, obnoxious gorilla that one day, while eating in this restaurant, Helen Mirren spies a bookish guy, kind of a guy, he's eating by himself, reading a book, minding his own business, very quiet, and the two of them wind up having an affair at the restaurant. They sleep together in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in the meat locker, all under the nose of this horrible gangster. So the whole time, you're wondering, when will they be found out? What will the gangster do? And what winds up happening is stuff that you cannot not imagine. This movie will hook you from the first second. Some people thought it was a knock on Margaret Thatcher. I don't know that I buy that. I mean, maybe if I lived there, I would. You know, I just think it's really more a function of you get this guy who, you know, this elite guy who's very obnoxious, and the smart guy, you know, the bookish guy who winds up being sort of the trod upon character. So I think it's really more of a class issue thing than really more of a Margaret Thatcher political thing. But either way, The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and Her Lover is just brilliant. It is like nothing you've ever seen. You've seen it, right?
I've never seen it. I've only seen the sequel.
I'll tell you, it's on Netflix, and when it first came out, the MPAA gave it an X. And this is one of the films that actually prompted the creation of the NC-17 rating. So you're right there at that cusp. So the MPAA gave it an X, and then Miramax decided to release it unrated. Now, what Netflix has done, which is great, and Hulu Plus also, is they've actually given you the full 2-hour and like 4-minute cut. Because there is a 98-minute cut out there, which you do not want to see. And luckily, Netflix and Hulu Plus, they've given you the longer cut. And I cannot recommend this film highly enough. I think it's a great film, The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and Her Lover. Right, Amy?
Way to go.
So that is my first recommendation. Amy, what is your recommendation?
My first recommendation is my favorite film, which is streaming on Amazon right now. And it is called Pennies from Heaven. It's the very second film that Steve Martin ever did. He came out, he did The Jerk, and then he had the muscle to do whatever film he wanted to do next. So he did this really interesting musical based on a British miniseries that used to star Bob Hoskins called Pennies from Heaven. And in the American version, it's a musical about a traveling song salesman who lives in Chicago who's got a terrible territory. And he loves the old classic songs of the 30s, like Life is Just a Bowl of Cherries. And he really wants his life to mimic the magic that he hears in the songs, where everything's perfect, nobody's sick and dying, There's no depression going on, and his wife is not refusing to sleep with him as his wife is in this film. So he's all about trying to capture this magic, and he comes across Bernadette Peters, who's this really pure little demure mouse who lives in this house with her brothers and her father. And they fall in love, but he's married, and he's also a complete cad and jerk, and then there's musical numbers on top of that. And it's the most depressing but hilarious film I've ever seen, and this is the film that if I ever wrote a book, it would be a book about this, because I think you could write 10 pages on every second of this film. It's fantastic, and if you haven't seen it, to me this is Steve Martin's best performance he's ever given. I know that there are people out there who would say Cheaper by the Dozen, but this is going to top it.
Nothing can top Cheaper by the Dozen.
Nothing. Have you seen
fighting words?
Have you seen Pennies from Heaven?
Pennies from Heaven, I like a lot. It's a really interesting film. You know, at the time it came out, it was super controversial and was considered a bomb because way back then it cost, hold on to your hats, this is a big budget film, it cost $22 million.
It's part of why they say musicals died.
Well, you know, the thing with the movie that I think might have turned people off, although it was such a bold choice, is that the scenes that took place in real life were very depressing. I mean, Steve Martin's going to like get hung in this film. You know, he's on trial for a crime and whatever. So the actual real life scenes are really, really dark and depressing.
Yeah.
They do not skimp on that.
They don't hold back at all.
Because in contrast to that, you have these musical numbers, which are great, and you've got the Busby Berkeley style choreography. You've got these great songs by, you know, like Fred Astaire, Bing Crosby. And Fred Astaire...
You've got costumes by Bob Mackie, who used to dress Cher.
That's right.
Ooh.
And, you know, and by the way, you know, Fred Astaire, who famously hated the movie, because I think, like, he was still in
Jealous?
Well, I think he was still in that thing where, like, you know, way back when, it was like rose-colored glasses, halo effect, that whole thing. But still, it's very dark, and the whole idea of the film being how real life is pain, but the movies are real. And that's where your happiness comes. I love that theme.
It's true, and if people aren't sold yet, you've also got Christopher Walken as a pimp who has a huge heart tattoo, and it's one of his first dance numbers. And I might also say that if you've ever seen Dancer in the Dark, the really depressing Lars von Trier one, once you see Pennies from Heaven, you realize everything that worked about this, he stole.
Whoa, look at that.
Whoa.
Lars von Trier, the Nazi.
I know.
That's a whole nother story, folks. Chad will talk about that next show.
Oh, and the last thing, Steve Martin learned how to tap dance just for this movie. So if you respect good old-fashioned Hollywood craft work, this is it.
There it is, Pennies from Heaven from 1980.
Flat up 80.
Nominated for three. It was a bomb. Still nominated for 3 Oscars. So it's a great recommendation, Pennies from Heaven. My second and final recommendation for this week is the 1981 drama Absence of Malice. Now, this is available on Crackle, and Sally Field plays a Miami newspaper reporter who implicates an innocent man, played by Paul Newman, in the death of a labor leader. And of course, Newman has the bad luck to be his relatives are in the mafia, so there is some question there as to whether or not he really did it, but really he's innocent, and Sally Field and Paul Newman sort of team up to sort of prove his innocence. And the movie, it's funny because a lot of critics who talked about this film back in '81, they really bumped against it because what Sally Field does in this film as a newspaper reporter, she's very overeager, she wants to win a Pulitzer Prize. What she does is so unethical in this film. But the funny thing is that if you watch it in 2011, the unethical thing she did as a newspaper person, now it's like, meh. Make up stuff, meh. Who cares? They do it all the time now. You know, steal stuff from other sources, meh. Doesn't matter. But back then in 1981, a lot of the critics who talked about the film, they were like, she would never do that. But you know what? It's a drama, so it doesn't matter. The film was directed by Sidney Pollack, the late Sidney Pollack, and he was so terrific. And you know, if you know Pollack's work, it's just very clean and crisp and just good storytelling. There's a great vengeance plot involved as Paul Newman kind of tries to set things straight. Very good performances. It feels like it was written by a real newspaperman, which of course it was written by a real newspaperman, a former Pulitzer Prize winner. And I just think the film is terrific. It's a nice little gem. It's a little bit like, it's on par with the film that I had recommended a few weeks ago called And Justice for All, where it's sort of that really solid mid-level kind of, you know, courtroomy kind of newspapery thing. So I like Absence of Malice a lot. It's available on Crackle from 1981. I don't know if you remember that film.
I was 2.
I was 27. Nobody's laughing. That means people like, wow, that might be true. It's not true, folks. God damn it. Do I look that old?
You look great.
You do. You're well preserved.
I hate everybody. It's not fair. Somebody else interview Colin Hanks. It's unbelievable. Okay, so Absence of Malice. That's my next recommendation. Now, Amy, you have one.
I'm doing 2 musicals this week. And my other musical is Step Up 3, which you might have seen in theaters if you saw it as Step Up 3D, which was kind of fantastic. I'm not going to lie to you, Step Up 3 is what you might call a terrible movie. Like, the characters are awful, and the dialogue is just horrific. The plot is a plot you've seen 50 times, and nothing new happens. Everything happens exactly how you might think it is, but the dancing is so fantastic. This film is directed by John Chu, who did the Justin Bieber documentary the other day, which, when I was on the plane a month ago, every man I saw on the plane was actually watching either that documentary or The Eagle. It was really weird. Justin Bieber sort of strangely popular. But I think that speaks to the power of John Chu, who's going to be directing the G.I. Joe sequel in a second.
Oh, thank God there's a
Thank
G.I.
God.
Joe sequel.
I know, but
my prayers are answered.
The thing is, this guy is a really young talent, and he's fantastic. The guy knows how to take a body and move it in directions that look interesting.
So does my masseuse, but he's not going to direct a film.
Well, no, but if there were 10 Mark Kaisers being moved in synchronicity by
Corey,
10
by the way,
masseuses,
Corey, hang on.
then this would be
I
fantastic.
thought that joke was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't a home run. It was a double. Corey?
Nobody laughed.
Is that what you're saying?
I don't
Maybe
think
I do.
anybody laughed. Did any person laugh at that?
No, not really.
No,
All right,
sorry.
keep talking about Step Up.
I'm sorry. But the dancing in Step Up is beyond belief. And if you want, it's on Netflix Instant, and you can actually fast forward all the talking and only watch the 10 dance numbers, which I did last weekend, and it's fantastic. And imagine it in 3D, and sort of close your eyes or cross them a little bit, and you can see that you might actually want to see G.I. Joe 2 only because John Chu is fantastic.
Okay, here's the thing, and then we have to move on to Parental Guidance. First of all, that movie sucks. And the second thing
Did you
is,
even see it?
F no, I'm not going to see that.
All right.
Although I'll say this: is there a dance number in Washington Square Park
I don't know Washington Square Park.
in New York?
There is this dance number that I think you might actually like that's kind of borrowed from Singing in the Rain. It's like a straight shot. It's just a one-take dance number, and it's like 2.5 minutes, and they swing on light poles, they jump on trash bags. This is all happening on the streets of New York.
Because I saw them shooting that.
Oh, is that true?
Well, because I was walking through Washington Square, and they're
he
shooting
says,
something, and I said, "Oh, what's that? What's that show?" He says,
So,
"Oh, it's Step Up 3."
You've sort of seen Step Up 3.
All I want to see of it,
That's
as it turns out.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Okay, so to wrap up the Cutting the Core, we have The Cook, the Thief, the Wife, and Her Lover. By the way, that's one film, not 4. Pennies from Heaven. That was funny. I hate all of you. Cruise fired. Whoa, it's fighting words. Absence of Malice and Step Up 3D for Cutting the Core. Yeah, you know it. All right, now, as we enter the 6th hour of the show, we have Philip Nelson is here with Parental Guidance. Let's do it. Good switching on the TriCaster. Look at that. TriCaster Emily, good job. Philip, TriCaster Emily.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Now, I always make fun of Philip Nelson because every time he recommends a film, I always like it. And I'm thinking maybe will this be the week where I don't like a film he recommends? Because every one he recommends is like, good film.
Let's see what he recommends.
Yeah.
So what do you got?
Something amazing.
Wow, what is it, Philip Nelson?
This movie was actually requested by my 7-year-old daughter, and I dreaded watching it with her, and was surprised when I liked it. And it's Free Willy 4, Escape from Pirate's Cove.
Wow.
So much for Philip picking the best movies ever.
I know, but here's the question: have either seen it?
Why would we? I mean, no, we haven't seen Free
Why
Willy.
do you love animals?
I think Mark's in so much shock he won't even talk.
I actually saw that with a double feature with Step Up 3D. So
Well,
tell us about the film.
So this movie, it stars actually Bindi Irwin, which is Steve Irwin's daughter from Crocodile Hunter, and also Beau Bridges. And when I saw that Beau Bridges was in it, I was like, hey, he's a good actor. So I don't know much of.
He plays the way.
You know what? My kids. I'm being attacked by beavers behind me. We're going to a midnight showing of Green Lantern, and they're getting restless. So that's who's walking
Hurry this
behind.
up.
Sorry about that. So Anyway, so the movie is basically Bindi Irwin. It's her first big movie with Beau Bridges, and it's about a little girl who goes to stay with her grandfather for the summer, and he has this rundown amusement park that's a seaside amusement park, and a wave washes in a baby orca into their little lagoon, and the grandfather kind of uses this orca as a way to revitalize his business, and it is a silly little story. But it actually was, I thought it was very good. So, I had to, one of the things I try to do with parental guidance is, these aren't, I tried to not pick kids' movies, movies that you would put on and let a kid watch while you go do laundry or something. It's actually a movie that you enjoy as a family to watch together. And so I wanted to share this one because I would bet that very, very few people have seen it because it never made it to the theater. It was straight to video. And I actually watched it on Netflix. But in the parental guidance segment, we rank the movies in different areas that are important to families, and every parent has a different hot button. So instead of saying go see this movie, I just kind of give you the rankings, and then you can pick if your hot button is hit. And those areas are action, language, romance, peril, and family enjoyment. So let's go ahead and jump into my rankings. In the action category, I'm going to give it a 3 on a scale from 1 to 5. It's right there in the middle. There's some kid-friendly action where the guy that has the big amusement park is trying to poison the whale so that it hurts his competition. But it's not really an action movie. In the language category, I'm going to give it the lowest ranking possible, which is a 1. Because there was no bad language in here. It's 100% family appropriate in that area. Also in the romance category, I'm going to give it a 1, which is very low because, it's just a sweet little family movie. In the peril category, I'm going to give it a 2. Really the only peril is when guys, please quit walking behind me or I'm not taking you to Green Lantern. So tough crowd. I know. I have to draw the line somewhere. But in the peril category, it's a 2 because the bad guy is trying to hurt the whale, and it might bother some kids a little bit. And also the fact that the baby orca is separated from its family, and it might be a little scary to some kids, but not really. And then in the family enjoyment category, I'm going to give it a 3. I put it right there in the middle. It's not like every family is going to love this movie. But it was one of those movies where I expected it to be so horribly bad that I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, anything that makes it to 4, it gets scary, and so I liked the first Free Willy. I didn't like the second and third very much. They thought they were okay, but I was surprised by Free Willy 4, Escape from Pirate Cove. Are you talking to me, Mark?
They're laughing. I don't know why are people laughing.
1 was good, 2 and 3 not so much, but 4.
But 4.
Now
Imagine if he was doing the Friday the 13th films.
This is the longest review.
8. Friday the 13th, 8. That's my pick.
In fact, this is the only review of
Jason versus Freddy. That's going to be next week's parental guidance.
Oh my
God. All right, so there you go. So Free Will. Huh? What happened? What did I do? Okay,
all I was going to say is it's free on Netflix. Give it a look. If you hate it after 10 minutes, turn it off. You've lost nothing but 10
So
minutes.
what you're saying is we provide a service to make sure that the viewers don't waste their time, and you're telling them, feel free to waste your time if you want.
I have to say, my 7-year-old loves this movie.
All right, there you go. If you got a 7-year-old,
Free Willy 4. Enjoy Green Lantern. Yeah, Philip Nelson.
Go take your kids
See
to
you
the
guys
midnight
later.
movie.
All right, so Colin Hanks says he's already taken a nap and a shower and changed his clothes, and because he's been here for so long, waiting to do Stupid for Movies. Now, here's the thing: Colin's about to come on. Now, he's got this documentary he wants to do. He's doing the whole crowdsourcing thing, and it's a great way to get your documentary done. And we want to have him on right now. Talk about crowdsourcing. Talk about the documentary, and let's take a look at the project right now. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Colin Hanks. A couple of years ago, my partners and I had an idea to make a documentary film about a man named Russ Solomon. Now, you might not recognize the name, but chances are you bought music from him. Russ is responsible for one of the most beloved companies in the history of the music business, Tower Records. In a story that spans over 50 years, Tower Records grew from one small brick-and-mortar record store to a global retailer selling records, videos, and books from Sacramento to New York, from London to Tokyo. Somewhere in this long history, Russ Solomon's store became much more than just a place to buy records. It grew into an institution. It seems everyone has their own story and a personal connection to what Tower Records meant to them. Now, to some, it represents the first casualty of the so-called death of the music industry. But to most people, it was a home for music. It was theirs. It didn't matter what kind of music you liked. There would be someone at Tower who could help you find what you were looking for and probably turn you on to something new. As we started down this road, we realized that this story is bigger than just Tower Records. With the introduction of Napster, Amazon, and iTunes, as Tower Records closed its doors, the collapse of Russ Solomon's dream became an example of a cultural shift, not only in the music industry, but in the way that people interacted with each other. On our first trip in 2008 to visit with Russ, I decided to drive by one of the old Tower Records stores. The neon sign was still on the storefront. Racks were still in the aisles. Headphones, telephones, and cash registers all still there. The only thing that had changed was that the store was completely empty. No customers, no workers, and no records. We threw together what we could as quickly as we could, documenting the store exactly as we found it. We also began the first of what we hoped to be many interviews with Russ, as well as the people on whom he relied to make Tower Records into a global brand. But we've only skimmed the surface. For this project, there's much more research that needs to be done, documents and pictures that need to be archived and digitized, and of course, many more interviews to be filmed. Which brings us to the question, what are we doing here on Kickstarter? Well, we thought that we could use the tools of this new era to help celebrate the old one. We feel that there's no one better suited to help bring this documentary to life than the people that loved and cared for the company the most. If you worked at a Tower Records, if you shopped at a Tower Records, or if you're just a fan of music history, we hope that you will help us with a contribution so that we can finish our documentary of this incredible company and the end of an era in music history.
Oh, Colin Hanks, everybody, come on! Now, Colin, before we talk, I have an announcement. I want you to know something. I just read that they greenlit Free Willy 5. Now,
Oh my God, that's so great because I'm all caught up on what happened in number 4. With all the scary meters, with the Orca family separating the thing, and the bad guys coming, and there's not a lot of foul language, which is great. I really hope they stick with that. I'm hoping Lori Petty makes a comeback. That's a reference to the first Free Willy. I don't think Michael Madsen's going to be in part 5, though, kids. Ask your parents who Michael Madsen is. I'm sure they'll be able to tell you.
oh my God, that's funny. So
I've never had to follow a review for a free movie online that is the 4th in a series of movies about an orca whale.
So are you saying the bar for entertainment is now set so low?
Stupid for movies, stupid movie!
Oh yeah, change the name. Everyone change the graphic. Corey, get on that, change the graphic. All right, first of all, thank you so much for being
My
here.
pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Streaming Garage. You know, but before the show, I was mentioning that you were in a film that I thought was just a terrific little gem called The Great Buck Howard.
Yes.
Now,
Thank you very much.
now The Great Buck Howard, that was with John Malkovich.
Yes.
who plays this illusionist, this kind of a magician-y guy, and he's completely sold on his own fame and his own level of.
Yeah, he's sort of a raging egomaniac.
Yes.
In a show businessy kind of vain way. Yeah.
And when you, this is going to sound so talk showy thing to ask you, but I just have to. John Malkovich is so good. Now, when it's like when you're working with a guy like John Malkovich, are you just kind of thinking he's going to go to weird places, and you just kind of have to go with it? Or
I never broke up more during a job than on that job. I mean, I was constantly breaking character and laughing and ruining takes because, like, I think the thing with Malkovich is that he's so used to having to just sort of play this one kind of guy because everyone sort of pins him as an insane guy. And what people don't know is he actually is incredibly funny and enjoys making people laugh. And even when he's doing his quote-unquote scary movies, he's still just trying to make people laugh. The best example I have there was, I mean, he would constantly throw out stuff, and he improv'd a large chunk of like little one-liners and stuff in the movie. But there was one night where the whole crew was around, and there was a TV that was playing In the Line of Fire, and everyone's watching it because it's like, it's John Malkovich, it's a good movie. It's Clint Eastwood. So we're watching it, and John's sitting there, and he's sort of like, he's watching himself in a movie, which is kind of cool. And you know that part where, Clint Eastwood is chasing Malkovich, and Clint Eastwood jumps across a building, and he doesn't make it, and Malkovich sort of holds his hand, and Eastwood puts a gun out, and then Malkovich puts his mouth on the gun. He did that to make Eastwood laugh, and Eastwood thought it was hilarious, and that was just like a joke, and that was it. It was just a joke, and of course that's like one of the creepiest parts of the movie, you know. Right. So like he's got this really sort of funny Joker mentality, and he's also fully aware that he can come off really scary to other people, and even like when he yells at people. Like, he will, like, yell, like, it's really hot in here! Can we get some AC? And then 2 seconds later, he's going, I could be such a dick. And it's sort of, like, amusing to him. He's a sweetheart of a man, and I would work with him in a heartbeat. And he really made that movie. I mean, he was far and above what we were expecting.
Well, it's sort of when you do a film, and you've done a number of films and TV shows, like The Good Guys, which I really like, do you find that, like, in terms of the attitude on the set, the atmosphere, is it kind of top-down? Like, if the star of the film, or if the director's a jerk or something, and kind of makes everybody edgy?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, without a doubt. Because, I mean, it's not like necessarily the golden rule that's set in stone. You know, I mean, sometimes you can have a blast on a movie that could be a great experience, and it just doesn't turn out that good. So you never really sort of know. And I'm actually sort of convinced that any movie that is remotely good, you don't know if it's really good or not. You're surprised by it. Because the ones that you think, oh, this is going to be really good, those are the ones that end up being really unwatchable. And so the ones where you have if you have a good time, that can sort of be a clue as to whether it's going to be pretty good. But, you know, ultimately, you also just sort of, a lot of people judge the movie by how well it does. And so, like, Buck Howard is one of these movies that sort of continues to live on in its sort of like post-released life, you know, and it's one of those things where it's like people, it's like you. People say like, oh, you know, that's actually a really, really good movie, and I like that. I like when it still sort of, has a life.
Now, I mentioned The Good Guys, and I like that show. You know, now here you're doing, you know, I felt like either Fox didn't give it enough time, or maybe they felt like, because it was sort of this throwbacky thing, that maybe people didn't get it.
I think it was a combination of a bunch of different things. I think it was a combination of the show, as all shows do, really needed some time to find its footing. And I think by the end of the first season, we had really started to get in a mode of what the show really was. But unfortunately, at that stage, there were all of these other factors that had sort of come into play. A lot of this stuff with The Good Guys was really strange. The show, we didn't do the normal sort of pilot scenario. It was picked up straight to series, so it was straight 12 episodes right away, which was great. But then we were airing in the summer, but before we had premiered in the summer, we had already been picked up for fall, which was great. But they announced us on Fridays in the fall, but we hadn't premiered on Mondays in the. It got really sort of convoluted, and people had a hard time sort of finding it. And then that combined with the natural sort of evolution of the show itself, eventually we got it. But it's one of those scenarios where it's unfortunate the way that it came out.
But at first, like, your agent calls you and they're like, Colin, weekly paycheck.
Oh,
family.
No, I was
right?
like weekly paycheck. That was like great, fabulous. Right? Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, 12 episodes right away. Yeah, fabulous, done. But it helped, I mean, Matt Nix is a very funny guy and an extremely funny writer, and Brad Whitford is one of the. I mean, that guy's hilarious. He actually left a 2-minute voice message on my phone yesterday that is him reading a monologue from Henry V, really sort of lamely, and then saying that if I don't call him back, he's going to resort to the Eugene O'Neill. And so I just have to learn to respect his acting. Like, he's just a weird guy like that. He's a funny guy like that. So, I don't know. Good Guys, I have a fondness for that show. And that's, in this day and age of, dudes reviewing Free Willy 4, these things have lives forever. They live on forever.
But then how does it, and then we'll get on to the documentary, but I just have to know, like, how does a show get canceled? Like, does somebody call you and say, dude, it's over?
No.
Do you already read in the trades? Do they pay you, they pay out the rest of your season?
The irony with The Good Guys is that they never, they didn't want to make the announcement. Which in one way is sort of like a slap in the face, but then the other way is kind of nice of them. They don't want to make the announcement that they're canceling the show so that it doesn't seem like the show's a failure. They want to just be able to say, oh, The Good Guys, months later, oh yeah, that's not coming back, and just sort of let it disappear. It's always. So
you found out because you read it on Just Jared or something like that.
I had a feeling that it was coming. I mean, and we all sort of knew that it was going to probably be coming at some point, but it took it ended up being some weird thing where some film commission site from Dallas mentioned it, and then another Dallas site mentioned it because the show shot in Dallas. It took place in Dallas. And then next thing I know, everyone on Twitter is saying, like, so sorry, you just lost your job.
I just can't believe there's no like high-level phone call. Like, somebody calls you and says,
not for the
Colin Hanks,
actors.
let's have the courtesy of giving him a phone call.
Not for the actors.
I mean, because if they were making a movie about it, then you would have had a moment, when you got the news, to do something ceremonial or like have a glass of whiskey, or the cast would get together and like shoot paintball guns. Like, what did you guys do?
We
rap party, big huge.
Yeah, we just had a big huge rap party.
Cocaine, everything. Be honest.
Mark's trying to live vicariously. So.
Listen, when you're up all night watching Free Willy 4, you gotta do whatever gets you through the night, as Lennon said.
It's all right.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
all right. All right, so now, forget the Buck Howard, forget The Good Guys, right? It's in the
Forget
past.
acting.
Beloved, in the past. You got this documentary.
Yes.
First, I want to talk about what the documentary is, because that's, to me, unbelievably fascinating. And then also how you're financing the documentary, which is so forward-thinking and equally fascinating. First of all, tell us about the documentary, this passion project that you have.
Me and some partners who I grew up with in Sacramento, where I was born and raised, we are making a documentary about the rise and fall of Tower Records. Tower Records was the global music retailer from around the world. Probably everyone here in this room at some point bought a record, or a tape, or a CD, whatever, an album from Tower Records. And it's basically charting the history of the company. We're, as someone that was from Sacramento, Tower Records was originated from Sacramento, and it has a really sort of tremendous history in terms of its point A to point B. And being a native Sacramentan, it was always a great point of pride that the company that big was from our hometown. And so initially what we wanted to do was just sort of, it seemed like an interesting story for a documentary. It seemed like a ripe documentary tale. A guy starts selling records out of his father's drugstore in the 40s, and it turns into the biggest music retailer in the world, and it totally helps revolutionize the way the music retail industry functioned. And so that's really sort of the documentary, and we've sort of started our conversations with Russ Solomon, who is the founder, and talked with a bunch of different people that he considers really vital to the company. And we're trying to make this documentary about this company that not only the people that worked for has a great fondness for, but pretty much anyone who's a music fan also has sort of great fondness for it, because the Tower really was a special place of its era, and that era is no longer.
But when you say that Tower Records revolutionized the way records were sold, how does that? What do you mean by that?
In the sense that when Russ started selling records, the idea of a record store did not exist. Music was sold primarily in department stores, Woolworths, supermarkets. That's where you would buy your 78s or your 45s. Back when it's all just proper, records. And Russ started selling used 45s out of his father's drugstore, and that was pretty much how music was sold. And as things progressed, and as he opened up an actual storefront, and the store sold nothing but records, that was sort of, I don't want to say that he created the record store, because he didn't. There were a lot of different record stores, a lot of different chains from around the world. But Tower was one of the sort of forerunners, if you will, that created sort of tenets of selling music that became the norm. The idea of, if you've got a big building, well, why don't you paint an album cover on the outside to advertise that you're selling that record? That had never been done before. That was something that Tower came up with. The idea of creating a magazine or a newsletter that was informing you of the albums that were going to be coming out that month. That had never been done before. Tower did it with Pulse magazine. The idea of creating a website that sold records that they would ship to your house had never been done before. Tower was the first one to do it. Tower had all of these sort of happy accidents that they discovered being music fans and sort of learning how to do this on the fly, that became the norm. And that, combined with the sort of independent spirit that Tower had at its inception, and pretty much every store that came out, every store had their own art department, every store had their own manager that ran the store their sort of way. It was a big chain, but each store had an individual feel. That was very different than, say, your Music Plus or your Warehouse or your Strawberry Records or Coconut Records or Sam Goodies or anything like that.
I mean, it's funny because as you describe it, I'm almost sort of flashing on the Apple Store in this way. It's something that seems very utilitarian. You go in, you buy a record, you go in, you buy a computer. But it became this place where people would go to flip through and meet other people and listen to music and see what's out there. It became kind of it seems like it became kind of a communal little neighborhood of music lovers who would come to this place.
Most definitely. I mean, it's some people sort of always laugh at the term, but it really was sort of like the salon of its time. I mean, I think you and me we might be the only three people that are understanding that term, salon. Yes,
why are you counting me out?
Well,
I know.
Well,
because I'm a girl?
No. Just like that seems to be a term that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you.
I'm with you.
But like the idea of it's a place where you can go and just talk. That it's a social place. I don't mean like a hair salon,
well,
obviously.
That's what record stores were. I mean, you would go in, and the big problem with record stores, you always go like, I don't remember what I wanted. And you'd sit there for 2 hours, and you discover something.
Yeah.
I mean,
but the people that were knowledgeable,
Amoeba exists now here.
Well, that was the big thing, is that Tower created an atmosphere in which you could be very comfortable. And one of the ways that they did that is they hired incredibly knowledgeable people that took great pride in their job. And so if you were looking for some obscure classical record, okay, there would be someone who worked in the classical department at a Tower Records that knew, you know, as much as they could. It was their baby. That's what they did. So there was an attention to detail to music. It wasn't just, well, let's take the top 100 records that are selling, we'll have 5 of them, and we'll just sell records. That wasn't it. It was all about your inventory. You had to, you know, each tower had to have an amazing, extensive inventory that had every single kind of record you could possibly imagine. So if it had Miles Davis, it didn't just have Bitches Brew and Kinda Blue, it had all of, you know, all of his records, that kind of stuff. It was that attention to detail that the people that worked for the Tower stores, the actual clerks, had for their store that is very, very special and very different, and was lost as the company sort of was bought out and was having financial issues, and that's all stuff that we're gonna touch into the documentary as well. But it's this story that, you know, initially was just the history, but then what really sort of has really made me a man obsessed is the kind of people that were involved in this company, the belief and love they have for it. I think it needs a proper send-off, because I didn't think it really got it.
Well, what I think is interesting is 10 years ago I would have said that Tower Records, like Blockbuster Video, would have been too big to fail. And it seems that in talking about its decline, you have to talk about the cultural shift we've seen in the last decade. Like, this is a story that's almost bigger than Tower Records, in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny. We've been working on this for a few years now, and the thing that I think is the most difficult to sort of incorporate into it is what exactly happened and why and what is it now, and it's constantly changing. When we started this documentary, Walmart was the #1 music retailer, and then it became iTunes, and then it's going to be something else, and it's something. I mean, it's constantly changing so fast now, and I think, you know, in a lot of ways, a lot of people sort of took Tower for granted because it did sort of seem like this too big to fail kind of thing.
It was almost the enemy if you were a person who thought you should go to the local record
Well,
store.
yeah, and a lot of people said, like, why on earth would you be celebrating a gigantic corporate, you know, entity that killed mom and pop stores? And, you know, you could make that argument for sure. Ironically, I sort of feel like the mom and pop stores, I'm not saying it's easier for them now, but they obviously can still survive a little bit easier now than Tower, which obviously didn't succeed. You know, Tower, I think, you know, the early history is really sort of, you know, a couple of guys and girls getting together and being crazy kids and opening up record stores and having a really good time. And by the end, they were far too big and just expanded into countries and cities that they had really no right being in, and that sort of, you know, that is unfortunate. I mean, in the year 2000, they did $1 billion in business. That's after Napster had been already out for a few years, and so it wasn't like all of a sudden like the lights went out. It was a process, and the process was essentially, quite frankly, just that, you know, you could now have the technology to get a bunch of people in a garage and put on a show and put it online. You know, I mean, it's the exact same thing. It's just the technology finally sort of overshot what Tower provided, and it couldn't survive on that huge level.
Well, we also, at some point, we might have talked about this in a previous show, music stopped being an album industry. And with iTunes, it's now more of a singles industry. And so really, when you go to these record stores, you find yourself buying older material.
Yeah.
Back when, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and now, of course, it's iTunes and people download singles for 99 cents. Yeah. So in a way, it's even tougher for these more modern, contemporary record stores to survive because it's just not really an album business as much anymore.
It's funny, Russ Solomon has a very interesting theory about that. He actually argues that the beginning of the fall of the music industry is when they stopped selling singles in record stores, because what they did then is once you stopped selling singles, you lost kids coming in and spending $1, $2, $5 on a cassette single. And once you stopped getting kids into the store, you missed an entire generation of people that were going to grow up buying records. And once you do that, then you're kind of screwed. So the idea of like the album as a lost form is totally true, and I think it's very, very valid. But ironically, it's also sort of the entryway. I think that's why, you know, iTunes worked so well. So like, well, now you don't have to pay $18.95 for a whole album that you don't want. Now you can just buy. In fact, not only can you buy a single, you can choose which single you want to buy, not the record label telling you you have to pick this song, or this track, you know, of, you know, these 8 songs. Now you can pick whatever any one you want.
Well, music industry when in its infancy was about the single.
Yeah.
It was, they didn't want the album.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
45s.
Yeah, it was
Those were
45s.
singles,
That was
yeah.
it, and then the flip side, and then I guess really because the Beatles, and that's why Sgt. Pepper was so, you know, amazingly what it was, because it suddenly became this concept album and Pet Sounds, and it was like, oh wait, you can actually do an album and it doesn't have to be what's the single.
Yeah.
And now it's come full back around.
And now it's come back around, and it is sort of a cyclical thing, you know. And I think that is really our job as you know, or my job as the filmmaker is that we're just going to try to celebrate the era, and that's you know, in Sacramento at the store. I mean, I think it was in the Kickstarter clip that we put up, but the guys that were running the store in Sacramento, they put all things must pass, thanks Sacramento, and that to me is sort of like the theme of the film, is that nothing lasts forever, you know, as simple as that, and I think that's a better title than what they put up at the Sunset store, which was "It's the End of the World as We Know It."
That seemed a little.
Well, it was stupid
defeatist
because
and stupid,
it was obvious and stupid, and because the next line was "and I feel fine."
Sure. Exactly. But you know, when you do a documentary and you're talking about what the theme of the documentary is, you know, people watch a documentary and there it is, it's all complete after years or whatever it is of filming. The tough part, and you can tell me what it was like for you, is finding that story.
Yeah.
Okay, Tower Records was invented and it was great, and now it's dead. What is the story? Like,
Yeah.
what's that through line?
Yeah.
Did you find that you had to look for that, or did it sort of come at you, or what is that through line? What's that story?
Well,
And also, how much cooperation are you getting from them?
We're getting full cooperation. I mean, once Russ got on board, he's been instrumental in sort of pointing us into the people that he really considers vital to the company. And in fact, when we went up to Sacramento, and once we sort of got Russ on board, next thing I know, he had a barbecue at his house and invited all of the former employees that still live in Sacramento, and we were sort of talking to them all. So we're going to talk to pretty much everyone that we feel is very that was important in opening the stores. And keep in mind, a lot of these people, by the time Tower closed in 2006, it was the only job that they had ever had. I mean, they started working at Tower when they were 17, and they just never had another job. So this is a huge, important part of their lives. When we started the project, like I said, it was just the history of it, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and I thought that would make for an interesting documentary. And then the more and more I talked with them, and the more documentaries that I watched, I realized that, you know, documentaries can be informative, but they also have to be engaging and entertaining. And the people that worked at Tower are some of the most entertaining and engaging people I've ever met. You know, I mean, they have terrific stories. You know, Tower was that place where if you had a big personality, that was the job that you could be at. You didn't have to wear a tie. You could have orange dreadlocks and tattoos. It didn't matter. You could be any kind of person, and that would be the kind of place that you could work at. You know. And so the documentary is still continuing to grow and evolve in its own way, and as we get more into filming more interviews, I'm sure it's going to grow even more in that regard. But really, that's kind of the fun thing about what we're doing with Kickstarter now, is that it's sort of letting everyone into that process and showing everybody what it's like, because it's also their movie too, in a strange way.
And how did that start? Who was the first person who said, "Hey, let's do this"?
I did.
Kickstarter.
I did. When we had shot, you know, we had shot a bunch of footage in 2008, and we then took that footage out and took a whole bunch of meetings to try and secure financing for the film. And it was right when the economy had just completely bombed. And pretty much everyone said, you know, we like the idea. You guys are obviously really passionate, but we don't know who wants to see this movie, A. and B, there are a lot of other companies that are going bankrupt right now. Why don't you follow that instead of celebrating a company that went bankrupt 2 years ago? And pretty much everyone we went to was sort of like, we appreciate your chutzpah, but we're not going to be giving you any money. And which was frustrating. And around probably within the last 9 months or so, I ran across Kickstarter. A friend of mine was doing a project, a photography project, and he had sent me this link to the Kickstarter, and I looked at it and I sort of said, oh, this is cool. I didn't really know much about it. I'm sort of like you, like the crowdfunding was not a term that I was familiar with. In fact, I was calling it microfinancing for the long. I said, we were going to microfinance the film. It's going to be great.
Like you're going to buy 2 goats and use them to make a movie?
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, essentially, I had this conversation with my producing partner, and I said, I think I found a way that we can knock a bunch of birds out with one stone. We could make a little money for our film. We can show people the kind of movie that we want to make, and we can advertise the film as well, and we can find an audience, and that audience can join us in trying to make this movie. And it seemed crazy, and I was like, does that sound like a good idea? And he said, yeah, I think that sounds like a really, really great idea. And so we went about, putting together a proper pitch video and coming up with different incentives for people to donate. We're kind of going into the merchandising business right now, trying to come up with T-shirts and stickers, and we're going to be printing our own records and DVDs and things like that. But it ended up sort of being kind of the best way for us to start really re-energizing with this documentary and getting it back out there, because it's not only accomplished those things that we wanted, but the offshoots of that have been really sort of tremendous and inspiring has been, not only have we now been put in contact with literally thousands of people that would have taken years to reach out and find, but by creating this Kickstarter page, Facebook, and the Twitter, we now have essentially the whole Tower family, which consists of literally hundreds of thousands of people that worked at Tower Records. And they all are, they're all finding each other online anyways. And so they're finding us, and they're getting excited about the movie. They're donating $5, $10, $20, sometimes $105, and they're getting involved. And the really exciting thing that is ironic that it sort of has come up this way, but by having those people involved in the movie, in a sense, is sort of creating that same sort of atmosphere and environment that every single Tower Records had. It's giving them a sense of ownership in the film, because it's something that they want to know about. It's something they want to hear about, and we want to try and tell the story as best as we can. So it's sort of this group mentality that is very, very strong amongst Tower employees and just music fans in general.
It sounds like a documentary that I'd seen in Cannes in 2000, I think it was 4, called Z Channel, Magnificent Obsession.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that one.
And it's Zoe Cassavetes directed it. It's a terrific documentary. And it reminds me of that because it's a company that was founded by one visionary guy creating a community of, in this case, movie lovers. And it sort of took on its own little personality. Yeah. And the people who loved it became a community of people who loved it. And the visionary behind it, he had his own problems, personal problems, career problems, and it just really drove that story. And this very much reminds me of Z Channel. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very common sort of thing. I mean, Russ is was and still is an entrepreneur. He's a smart guy, and he was constantly sort of hustling and constantly trying to find out the best way for him to make a buck. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in a sort of, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to sell records, he wanted to make money, he wanted to have a good time, he wanted all of those sorts of things. And that spirit that he had, that a lot of other people had, as I'm sure some of the people here in this room have, doing this show the way that it's being done. That sort of sense of like, well, we'll just do it. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way to do it because we love it. We don't care if we're paid.
What are you saying, Colin Hanks?
I don't know about that.
They get pizza.
But they did get pizza. I got pizza too.
Yeah.
I got paid. But that sort of sense of like, let's just try and have a lot of fun and hopefully make some money in the process. And it just went so much farther than you would have possibly imagined. I mean, it started in Sacramento in the drugstore, and then they opened up a proper store, and then that did well enough to open up another store, and then that did well enough to do another store, and then they said, well, let's do something really crazy and open up a store in San Francisco. And then that did really well because it just so happened to coincide with the Summer of Love when that city was invaded by 100,000 hippies. And then that was a raging success. And then they said, well, then maybe we can try opening up a store in Los Angeles. So let's build a store in Los Angeles. And it just will so happen to be on the Sunset Strip. And that will just so happen to become this iconic building, this mecca for kids and this mecca for the music industry that was all coming up in Los Angeles. And then instead of going then from New York, or going to New York or Nashville or any of these places, they went to Japan. Not because they wanted to, but because some other kid who was from Japan and was going to school in the States loved tower and thought that he could open up his own tower in New York or in Japan without telling anyone from the tower in the States. And so some record buyer who Russ knows, who was going through Japan selling records, said, hey, you might want to go to Japan because there's this kid who's trying to open up tower stores. And that's how they opened up Tower Records in Japan. It's
so
like,
there was no lawsuit. It was just
there was no lawsuit. No, they worked it out.
Fighting?
They ended up working it out. They did some kung fu fighting, but they solved it.
Wow.
And it's like those little sorts of things, it is true. Like, I'm sure Blockbuster has a similar story. I know Nike has a similar story to that. But it's with Tower, there are just all of these great personalities in this history that I just think when you look at it in the perspective of, well, these are just some guys from Sacramento who are selling records. And it turned into Tower Records. I think it's really sort of astounding and really fun.
Got a couple of questions from the chat room.
Ooh,
Chat room.
Beatmaster80 wants to know top 3 music movies. Are you a big movie?
Top 3
movies about
Step Up
music?
3D.
Step Up 3D. Could that be all 3? Because it's in 3 dimensions.
Well, there
if you
are
do it
others.
3.
You could just say Step Ups 1, 2.
Step Up to the Streets. Step Up.
Do you have any
3.
favorite? Do you have any favorite movies? Does that influence you when you're making this? Your love of music?
No, not too much. I mean, I'm pretty much into High Fidelity is definitely high on that list. It has to be. It has to be high on that list. What's some other ones? I don't know. Empire Records. I wasn't a huge Empire Records movie.
Idolmaker's my favorite.
Say which one?
Idolmaker.
You know what? Idolmaker's great. American Hot Wax is great.
American Hot Wax. Yeah.
That's a good one too, right?
Yeah.
Walk Hard.
Right.
Walk Hard.
Walk Hard's funny.
The
Walk
the
Hard's
Dewey
really
Cox
good.
story.
Yeah,
That's a
you're
very
good with the
funny one.
semicolons.
Well,
That's
Beatmaster
what
who
comes
asked was very happy with High Fidelity.
That's a good one.
They liked your
Apparently
answer.
that was the
That's a
right
good
That
one.
was the right answer, apparently. They were
some-
testing you.
But then, sometimes the documentaries are better. Sometimes the documentaries.
Are you a big doc guy? Is this why?
I'm,
What do you think is a very well done doc? That when you're doing this, that you are thinking about, how? Man, I hope this is as good as.
Oh no, I don't want to break
Don't
my
do that?
brain like
All
that
right.
just yet. No. I don't want to do
Phil
that.
from the Fury.
That's a good one.
That's a
yeah.
good one, right?
That's a very good
I
one.
guess talk a little bit about how people can help this, how they can fund it, how can they be part of this.
Yeah. So this is where I can go. All right. Hey
Yes.
everybody. How's
Sell
it
it.
going? What you can do is you can go onto Kickstarter.com and you can do just a keyword search for Tower Records. Will come up. The film is called All Things Must Pass: The Rise and Fall of Tower Records. And you can go on our page. You can see our little pitch video. And once you're done with that, we have a little bit of a written sort of statement of what we want the movie to be. Which sort of reiterates what we talked about in the video. And then you'll see a bunch of different sort of incentives. And the incentives sort of work. If you have $5, you get a sticker. $10, you can get T-shirt to $15 for posters, and it can go all the way up to, you know, if you really have $2,000 to spend and you want to come to a private screening that I'll host, you can do that. And essentially, you become a backer of the film, and you sort of get updates from us as we make the film, as things progress. And you sort of become a part of the team, so to speak. We've already raised, our initial goal was $50,000. You have to set a goal, and then if you reach that goal, you then are able to collect the money. If you don't reach that goal, you do not collect the money. We were very fortunate, and we raised $50,000 in 5 days, which was great.
Nice. Great.
And I'm very, very thankful to everyone who has already contributed. But fundraising is not done. It is not over. The more money that we raise, the more money we have to make our film. So the more money we have, the better the film will be. And a majority of the funds will go towards essentially the small nuts and bolts of the filmmaking, buying lighting packages. We have to travel to places like Sacramento and New York. I'm hoping to get to Japan because there's a big group of people in Japan that I'd like to interview. And so we're just asking for help, essentially.
Awesome.
And for just $5, you can get your name in the credits.
Yeah, and at every level of donations, you get your name in the credits. And you can donate money and have someone else's name in if you want.
Like I could give this to Mark for his birthday.
Yes,
There
you
you
could.
go.
Just spell my name right, please.
You could.
Nobody ever tells her.
That's fine. I don't
it
know how, but I'll
AS?
make sure that it's
That
done
is-
correctly.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And then other than this, something you can't talk about, Dexter.
Dexter.
We do a show here called Stupid for Dexter as well,
Yes.
and you can tell us what about it.
As with all things with the Dexter television program, I can neither confirm nor deny anything
There we go.
about my involvement in the Dexter television program.
Awesome. And when you can, we hope to have you on.
I am in it, though.
Yes.
That
There you
much
go.
is true.
That you can say.
There
I'm
we
in
go.
12 episodes.
So
12 episodes!
get ready for that, and we're hoping
That's
on
the weekly
the.
paycheck we're talking about.
It's
Get in there,
it's
get
gonna
it done.
end exactly
Yeah.
like Good Guys.
You got more. Oh.
And the 12th episode, we'll wrap this place in plastic and bring you in.
I really don't want to be
It's
in
creepy.
this place. And,
Oh, it's
I
creepy.
know.
We'll show you the beginning when where there are
It's
cats
not-
on the cats on the Dexter table. It's very creepy.
It's not the plastic that makes this place creepy.
Oh, it's Corey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Actually,
sorry.
I really want Chad Vader back.
Yeah, he's great. He's every week.
Is
He's a
he
regular.
in it
Yeah.
every week?
He's our news guy.
What a great guy.
He's very fun.
I like Chad Vader.
Would you like to maybe do a show with Chad Vader? We can make that happen as well.
Yeah. Well, you want to know
no-
what? Let's wait
there's
until
no money.
Free Willy 5 comes out.
Yeah. We'll do a Free Willy 5, you and Chad Vader adventures. It would be great.
You have no idea how hard it was to sit here while you guys are reviewing movies and be like, oh, I want to say something about this movie.
Oh, you could.
I wanna say-
Oh, you could totally yell
I
out.
didn't want to do
Oh, we
that.
should have gave
Oh,
you a
you
mic.
should have done it.
We should have gave you a mic.
You should have.
I can do it all right now.
Yeah. Go.
Go through it real
Run it
fast.
The
down.
Chinese aren't going to care about the Green Lantern movie because they have green paper lanterns all over the country.
Yeah.
That was in the best.
Super 8 is essentially, when you really think about it, Steven Spielberg's wet dream. So J.J. Abrams is incredibly smart to just go, I'm going to make the movie that Steven Spielberg wants me to make and wants to see. So you could say, in other words, that it's Spielberg porn. I wouldn't go that far because that has a different connotation, but it involves everything that he loves. Children, and I mean that in a very sensitive, normal way, filmmaking, and monsters. Conan O'Brien's really, really funny, and that's a good documentary. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I have a feeling, regardless of what you say, if Dennis Dugan had directed Super 8, you would have liked the film.
It would have been a totally different film
It would have been a totally different film.
because it would have sucked, as opposed to the one that J.J. Abrams did.
There'd be
Which
a
was
lot more
good.
people tripping and falling, but that's
He's the
fine.
worst. Have you worked with Dennis Dugan? Be honest.
I have not worked with him, but I know him.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
Mark.
I'm just saying.
So this is all very strange for me because I know some of
Yeah,
the people.
sure. No,
It
it's
is-
the same with us. It's when
It's
he's meant to be like,
strange.
we kind of know that.
Have you ever seen? This is true. I've never felt like less of a man that when I happened to walk into a room that also contained Ryan Reynolds. He just has that aura.
But he's actually
he's
very
I'm not
nice.
saying that
He's
smug,
dreamy. He's
cold
dreamy.
fish thing that you were saying earlier, but he's
He's a guy. Well,
he's
it's
a man.
It's like a John Hamm thing.
He's a man.
I think he's even more of a man than John Hamm. I'm not on Team Hamm.
Really?
There's something
Team
about
Ham?
Reynolds.
Too dark on the 5 o'clock shadow?
Yeah.
Team Hamm is just too weaselly for me. There's something about the face.
No, but
I can't
in
get
real
behind.
life, John Hamm in real
Oh,
life
I'm
is just
sorry.
a quiet guy who likes to go and watch comedy.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
puts his St. Louis Blues hat on. He kind of hides. He puts on glasses and he goes to like UCB and watches
Well, you've
comedy.
added him now.
I know I've added
Yeah.
him. But he loves John Hamm.
Guys, we're kidding. He's a Nashville Predators fan.
Yeah, he's not. You see a St. Louis Blues hat, that's not him.
It's not him.
That's Bob Ham.
Yeah, that's Bob. Ham.
Well, with that, I think, anytime you want to come in and review movies, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah. All
As
right.
long as they involve people you don't know. Or
That's
people you want to work with.
yes.
See, that's the problem. That's
Okay, the
actually
number one
problem.
person you want to work with, go. Number one person you're like, I got to work with that guy. Director and actor, go.
Oh, that's easy. Matthew McConaughey. And Dennis Dugan.
This interview is over.
All right, you know what it's time
It's
for?
over. Buy, rent, or burn, folks! By the way, you got to go on the Kickstarter and support Colin's film. This film sounds fantastic.
Thank you very much.
You know,
You
come
can
on,
invest
guys.
as little as $1.
You can invest as little as $1.
$1.
Yes, that's why we brought him in. I mean, we're trying to do more. People have asked about independent movies, and that's why we brought Colin in. We're bringing in the guy who did, Conan
O'Brien
next week, and then possibly dying to do Letterman. A few of my friends did that. Hopefully, will come up soon too. We're trying to get some more independent filmmakers in here because none of us are big fans of the huge studio system. Everybody wants to see very smartly done, well done movies, and that comes from independent filmmakers like Colin.
That is true. Yeah.
We're trying something new.
Yes.
That's right. All right, so buy, rent, or burn. Now, for the uninitiated,
Yeah.
Mike, how does buy, rent, or burn work?
Buy, rent, or burn works that on Facebook you list a movie and then people like it, and the one with the most likes, we then ask these guys over here if they should buy it, rent it, or burn it. And by burn it, we mean in a fire.
In a fire.
All right. So here it goes by likes. I'm actually going to start with that one. I don't know if you had the right order. I know it's the wrong order. Okay, with 13 people liking, and we put this at the bottom, Elaine smartly did, but all right, I got to go by the rules, and the rules is the number one liked one. With 13 likes on Facebook.com/stupidformovies, from Matt Wright, The Human Centipede.
Did we talk about this a
Yeah,
couple weeks
just-
ago?
We didn't buy, rent, or burn it, though.
Huh?
Did we buy, rent, or burn it?
It's below burn.
I know. So burn it.
We mean literally, this one, I think we're all in
Yeah,
agreement.
actually,
Yeah.
You can
actually
burn,
burn
it.
it.
Like throw it in the fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
wait,
it-
there is worse than buy, rent, or
What's worse
burn.
than Byron or Burn right?
There is something worse.
Hit of acid?
What we do is
Can
we take the
No, no.
worst
Hit of
movie of the
acid?
year, and we say it's lower than, which is Sucker Punch right now, is what we've decided.
It's
It's the worst film of the year.
So
So I
you-
say sucker punch that thing.
So we Sucker Punch it.
It's got the whole thing going on.
Okay, now we're gonna go to that one. No, with 10 people liking, from Lance Taylor asks about Jurassic Park.
First of all, Lance Taylor is a longtime listener of the Digigods podcast that Wade and I record for IGN.com. So hello, Lance Taylor. Thank you for watching. Jurassic Park. Now you got to buy that. It's Jurassic Park. Dinosaurs. Rawr.
Bye.
Objects in mirror closer than they appear. That great shot in
Bye.
the thing. Remember? Rawr.
Everybody
For
saying
historical
bye.
context now,
Okay,
I think
okay.
you gotta buy.
for historical context, fine. I was
Yeah.
gonna say rent just because everybody's seen it 10 times. Do you really need to own
It's
it?
still a good movie.
It is still a good movie. And you know what? Those dinosaurs look better today than almost anything in the Green Lantern.
You know, it's true. That is totally true.
It
The
is
Green
true.
Lantern's like watching it's like watching Halo.
I still think that CGI topped off at Terminator
Like
2.
watching your roommate play.
Play Halo. It's even worse.
It's not even playing. It's
Go that way. Oh, he's not going that way.
He didn't get the power up.
Yeah, power up.
All right, 8 people.
Shoot the gun that spreads.
8 people liking Wes Yunker's pick of
That's
Punch
a lot of people.
Drunk. Yeah,
We're
not
talking
really.
15 people like this movie.
8. Well, it's like, it's spread out. There was like
Okay.
60 people recommended and their friends
Okay.
come, so it's all.
We
we
did
pick like
Punch
10.
Drunk Love. I think we did that the last show.
Did we do Punch Drunk
Yes,
Love?
I said.
Wes does not pay attention to the show.
Well,
there's new people. Punch Drunk Love.
P.T.
I'm
Anderson.
burning it.
I bowed down
Yeah.
to P.T.
Yeah.
Anderson. You can do no wrong.
Oh wait,
I love
what's
that
Amy
movie.
saying?
I'm burning it. This is the most misogynistic film I've
What?
ever seen. Yeah, the female is not a character. The love story is ridiculous. It's only just A guy's fantasy about being a misunderstood bully, but somehow find an amazing girlfriend. See also
Okay,
Sideways. I
okay.
hate this genre of film.
As opposed to Green Lantern. Now, here's the thing with Green Lantern. Angela,
You're never gonna live this one down.
Angela
Never going
Bassett is in Green Lantern, right? The only African American character in the whole film, right? She's in the movie for 3 seconds with a horrible wig, and there's a scene where you flash back onto her past, right? Remember that when he touches her and flash back? It was the most cliched, insulting past that you can give an African American character. She lives in the projects and her family died in a gang shooting. You're like, that's like insulting.
She doesn't live in the projects.
Yeah, there was a shot of the Cabrini Green.
It said Cabrini
signage.
Green?
Colin, what do you
Yes.
say about Punch Drunk Love? Byron or
Is
Bird?
that where we were? Yeah.
Yeah,
was
Byron or
Punch Drunk
Bird.
Love. That's what, I don't know where the Green Lantern thing came
I don't know
from.
either. That's why I'm trying to move on from them.
I think he was like, he's got some childhood issues
Yeah.
with old
With
Green
Green?
Lantern.
I think he's
Might.
got some
Camping-
adult
little camping
issues
problems, maybe?
about-
I only saw the movie once. I remember actually not liking it that much. I would say that it's due for a reviewing, so I would rent.
All right.
Oh, I like the justification, the reviewing justification.
All right,
knew
let's
gonna use
move on. With 7 people liking, Crisette Loretta asks about Daydream Nation. Daydream Nation.
Daydream Nation.
Nation.
I remember that film. Is that the
I don't remember this
I
movie.
don't know.
Daydream Nation? Who directed that? Somebody?
I don't know.
IMDb it?
My internet's down.
Daydream Nation.
My internet's
I'm
down.
going to
We're doing
rent
an
it.
internet show, and he just said my internet is down.
Awesome.
God, that sounds familiar. What is that? Somebody help me out.
Daydream Nation is Michael Goldbach.
Documentary, right?
Tells the story of a city girl who moves to a small town and becomes entangled in a love triangle.
Green Lantern.
That reminds me a lot of the Green Lantern. You know,
Can I tell another story about the Green Lantern? It's very
No.
important to me.
All right, so moving on. You don't
Moving
know.
on.
Great.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that we're going to rent it so we can find out what it is.
Great.
Yes.
There you go. Let's rent Daydream Nation to find
way
out
to
what
bring
the
it back.
heck it
Good
is.
justification.
that's good. Bringing it back.
We're gonna rent. There you go.
Hey!
Axel Pironio on Facebook asks about Grave of the Fireflies. It's an anime.
Yeah, you know what?
Cat knows a cat.
I know. It's all that Kat wants me to say bye to the Japanese anime Grave of the Fireflies. Sure.
Is that a good one?
It is sad.
It's so sad.
It's a sad anime.
No, it's good.
Oh,
All right,
really?
Mark says bye. Amy,
Well,
do know
If you
the
like
anime?
that kind of stuff.
I need
don't
to ask
know.
the expert a question. Is there tentacle porn?
Well, in that case, burn it.
Burn.
Not this one.
Burn. I'm done.
In the sequel. No,
Colin, you like the
that's
anime?
fourth one.
I'm not necessarily a big anime dude,
Me neither.
so buy it. I got the
That
money.
makes no sense at all.
I got the money.
I love it.
What? I'm buying it in the $6 bin.
There you go.
There it is.
Okay, let's go to Christina Young asks about The Goonies.
Well, because we talked about Super 8, that's one of the films that JJ is sort of,
Right.
paying homage to, is The Goonies, which is great. It's a good movie.
Buy.
It's fine, buy it. Colin says buy it. I
Buy
say
it.
buy it. Amy, what do you say?
I'm going to do everybody a favor and say you should burn it because if you watch it again as an adult, you're going to be reminded that it's not as good as you think it was.
Back here ever.
You
again.
don't.
Corey just kicked you out.
I just got kicked out. You guys don't. If the movie is this beautiful thing in your memory, let it stay that
You know
way.
what I'm going to say? I've never seen The Goonies. I didn't have a childhood.
Never come back.
I think I saw the tin drum when I was a kid. That's my childhood.
Tin Drum.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah, I
There you
I
go.
didn't really have a childhood thing.
And Luna.
That took away.
That
I was
is
always
sad.
like, I'm dark.
That took away your
Yeah,
childhood.
pretty much. I'm going to jump down the stairs and never grow. Yeah, it's weird. Weird movie if you haven't seen it.
No,
Weird
Goonies
movie.
is a good movie.
It is
I would like
Goonies,
to
yeah.
see. I would like to know what an 8-year-old thinks of Goonies now.
That's a good question.
That's what I would like to know.
I will.
So I almost think you have to like sort of phrase: would you buy, rent, or burn for an 8-year-old?
Oh,
kid?
we have a thing called
Oh,
parental guidance.
parental
maybe you can do that
guidance.
instead, and maybe you do movies like
Is
that instead
that
of Free
is
Willy
that
4.
where the Free Willy?
Yeah,
4?
maybe you can come in and do Goonies. You have children, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
have. I do have children.
He's
He's
been there this long. He's not sure anymore where he is.
I'm just saying, I don't know, but then, if it gets me onto the show quicker, then yeah, I'll do the parental guidance thing.
This is gonna be the longest show by far.
Love it.
All right, here we go. Let's go. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, roll.
All right, let's go to the Ustream chat. Let's go to Rami Alam, whose course is in Egypt. Always here every week. I think it's like 6 a.m. in Egypt. What are you doing? Vampire's Kiss.
Vampire's Kiss.
I don't know that movie.
Isn't that Nicolas Cage?
That's the
Cage.
Nicolas Cage
Oh,
thing. No,
yeah.
no.
Not the
well,
one where he's full of bees.
No. That's the Wicker Man. No, Vampires Kiss.
The
Look,
one where he's screaming about toast? Why did it burn?
Yeah.
Why did it burn?
there is no such thing as a good Nicolas Cage film at this point. The last good Nicolas Cage film that I would recommend would be The Weatherman, the Gore Verbinski film, which I liked a lot.
I like Leaving Las Vegas.
Well, that was before. But The Weatherman was in 2006, 7,
You had
So we're
something
saying
like that.
you're
Not,
probably
not
saying,
even Bad Lieutenant 2? Bad Lieutenant 2 is fantastic.
I didn't like that movie.
Are you saying Burn?
Burn.
Burn, Vampire's Kiss. You guys no opinion?
Oh, Brent it?
Didn't he eat a cockroach in
To
that movie or
see-
something?
Again, I'll
yeah.
buy it.
Oh, this
He
is
was
the
a method cockroach
one.
eater in that film.
Oh,
All right, here we go.
That's
Let's try
the
to do
film
two
that
more
got
here.
in trouble with the ASPCA.
Ustream chat. Shut Up May asks about 10 things I hate about you.
I'm not going to.
This is young Heath Ledger. This is Heath Ledger with wet curly
That's
Jerry
what killed
curl
him, by
hair.
the way. Big in movies, that bad.
Oh my God.
Oh, jeez.
That's right.
Wow.
Go cut that out into a YouTube video. We'll get
so
dozens of people
I
to watch
I
it.
was at his house
Water-
once. You're
No,
hitting
that's
people
right.
that
Are you
knew or
serious?
don't
You just
know
made
or
that joke?
Used to know or
Yes, I did.
wow.
Just burn it. Come on,
Who
it's
else was in
terrible.
it? Who else was in
No.
that movie?
Julia Stiles.
Julia Stiles was in that.
Terrible.
David Krumholtz was in that
Julia
movie.
Stiles, who also Dexter season 5.
Joseph
Yeah.
Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah,
was in that movie.
I
So
think
you're saying
you're
rent,
right.
buy? You don't care.
I'm gonna buy it.
I was in movies like those. They're all interchangeable.
Yeah. Let's go for YouTube chat. Let's go for Dream of Fallen One asks about Long Hot Summer from 1958. Is that better?
Is that the is that the film noir Long Hot
Elaine
Summer?
probably
Like
knows.
noir, doesn't
Well, you're the only
Elaine
one who
doesn't
was
know.
alive back then, so why don't you tell us?
Oh!
That's an outrage. I was
What was
5.
No, you're not.
Yeah,
Long Hot Summer.
27.
Wow, they're picking one.
It's all coming together.
It's a Paul
Huh?
Newman movie, Joanne Woodward.
Oh, that's right.
1958.
Very good.
Buy it.
That was
Buy it, buy it,
that
buy
was
it.
Anthony Francioso.
It's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
Paul
It's
Newman
good.
in it. Buy it.
It's good. Yep.
All right,
Especially
you
back
gotta buy?
then.
Gotta buy it.
Especially back then.
We've got to buy. Let's
Go.
do one
Let's
more.
do one more. Let's do 16
Nick
more.
Money,
This is good.
Grandma's Boy. Last one. I don't even know what that is.
I know.
Why are people picking bad movies? You're killing me, people.
I know that movie.
Well, why don't you tell us about it?
Nick Swartzen's in it, and
Yeah.
Alan Covert,
All right.
and it was
Oh.
not directed by Dennis Dugan.
I will never live that down.
It was directed by Nicholas Goosen, and yeah, rent it. It's a funny
Were
little
you
movie.
on it? Were you on it? You were not in it.
Is this when
I
he
remember reading
falls
it.
in love with his grandma?
No, he moves in
He's
with
living
his
with his
grandma.
grandma.
Yeah, yeah, he's living with his grandma, and he's like a video game tester. Linda Cardellini is in it.
Ah.
As much as I hate,
Love Linda
I hate
Cardellini.
to contradict Colin Hanks, but I have to say burn it.
I say rent anything with Linda Cardellini.
Smart
It's a good
man.
thing to live by.
Smart man.
All right, so that's Buy, Rent, or Burn, folks, with special guest Colin Hanks. There it is. All right, 6 hours later, we're wrapping it up. What?
What are we going to talk about in the second half of the show?
The Green Lantern. More about the Green Lantern. Okay, here's what we learned. What we learned is we learned nothing except that Colin Hanks has a documentary that you guys got to go to Kickstarter to support.
Kickstarter.com, keyword search Tower Records. All things must pass.
And
The
then
rise
while
and
you're
fall of
there,
Tower
we may be up
Records.
on Kickstarter by that point
You
too, so
might
feel
be
free to
as
give us a
well.
little as well.
That's true.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you to Amy Nicholson.
been great
She
seeing you,
was
everybody.
fantastic. Thank you to Colin Hanks. Thank you to the best crew in the internet world. We'll be back in 2 weeks, folks. We'll see you. Good night.